right, I am not good at rhyming, so this is going to take away here, but I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit today about experiential learning. So I'm a science teacher at Montague High School. I teach everything from food science to ecology, and I'm also an FFA advisor. And so I'm going to talk to you about today experiential learning. And I think for most educators, this kind of looks like a field trip, right? You take your students on a field trip, you're the one that's facilitating the learning that's happening, and the students are just there to watch. And so what I have the privilege of is teaching classes that leverage students being the ones that are designing that field trip. And that field trip happens every day for them, and I'm the one that gets to sit back and watch. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today and the philosophy that I've learned from my students. The best way to push them to make field trips every day and to make new field trips and bigger and better field trips until they leave my program, and then from there we see better leaders that go out in the world from Montague. So this is going to be kind of a case study by case study thing today. So this first picture really represents where we started. And so this is a student of mine that graduated just this last June, Emily, and she is throwing a bucket that I made with a rope to capture water to test it for E. coli. And this perfectly sums it up because I had the wherewithal to send her out there the day before Thanksgiving in this freezing cold river and a pair of waders to go capture this water. And this is a creek that empties out into Lake Michigan there in the background. And so really that represents the first students identified as people that were ready to take on this challenge. Somebody that on their Thanksgiving Day break would go out in the morning and capture water from this freezing cold river. And so it was a great way to start this. And I said, okay, if I can have some of these students, well, where can I build from here? And so Emily represents really that starting point. And at the end of this presentation, I'll kind of show you how far we've come just in a year with these kind of learning practices. So some definitions to get out of the way, and I'm going to give you all some acronyms because this wouldn't be education without being inundated with acronyms. So here's 3 more for you in your toolbox. First of all, FFA, not actually an acronym anymore. It used to be Future Farmers. Now it's a branded 3-letter term, and really it's food, fiber, and natural resources at this point. And so anybody in the county that maybe be from Ravenna or is familiar with Muskegon's Career Tech Center, they have FFA programs as well as up in Montague. And so this is agriculture, but it's really everything. The food on your body right now to the food that you've eaten and the clothing on your body right now. An SAE is a supervised agricultural experience, and this is what a third of my teaching consists of. And so the supervised part is me. The agricultural part, again, is food, fiber, and natural resources. And the experience is the student. So it's these experiences that these students do. And there's 2 different types. There's placement and there's entrepreneurship. And so whether it's a student that has a job somewhere or it's an entrepreneurship where the student made this thing. So they've either made a company, they've made a research experience. And finally, the triple D, not diners, drive-ins, and dives. Although I'd love to give a talk about that. That's near and dear to me. But no, it's dreaming, development, and determination. And so this is a philosophy that we've gone forward now with to help plan for student success during the school year. So this is one of my, this is one of my favorite students from this last year because she started off as a freshman doing this. And I think that's so cool that now we've gotten to the point where I'm not tapping on seniors to do this. I can trust freshmen to do this. And so she's not able to drive, but she is able to raise ducks from ducklings all the way up to a processed bird. And so this last year she came to me and she had this dream that she wanted to take care of ducks. And I said, you realize that either you are going to take care of them throughout their whole life as they lay eggs, or they're at some point going to have to go to the butcher. And she started crying immediately when I said that. And that was back in April. And then fast forward to 3 weeks ago, she took them to the processor herself, and she was able to hold those birds and sell them at the farmer's market. And so that really, if that doesn't encapsulate what we're trying to get at here with this growth and maturity in this process, I don't know what does. And they didn't stay that cute for that long. They turn into real ducks that make a lot of mess. So I think that helped her in that maturation process. So step 1 is the dreaming part. And this is a student of mine, Emma Flynn, who's going to be a junior this next year. And she to me really represents that dreaming part because for months and months and months she told me that she wanted to make money somehow. I said, okay, well, you get a job. That's how that works in the real world. And she said, well, I don't really want a job. I want something where I can make money in a different way. I said, okay, well, growing things is what I happen to do, and in this world we live in, we can grow things to make money. And so I said, well, what kind of things do you want to grow? And she said, well, I want to grow something that nobody else does. She happens to be a ham for attention, so she wants something that's going to be provocative and different. So I said, okay, well, what about some exotic plants? And she said, okay, well, did a little bit of research, and the first thing she went with was bamboo. And so I said, okay, well, this could be great, or this could be an exotic species that takes over the ecosystem of Montague. And she took that as a personal challenge, so we started growing bamboo. And me being an ecology teacher, this makes me nervous every day looking at it, but it's okay, it's not doing that well the first year, and I'm almost happy with that. Because if it wasn't, we might have a problem right now. But at any rate, so dreaming takes into consideration these real conversations. So having a conversation with Emma, more than just, oh, how was that basketball game last night? It's, oh, you like to make money. Oh, you like to do things that are different than other kids. Well, how can we blend these two together, right? So it's more than just that passing conversation. It's having a sit down. And also meshing skills and that little bit of push. Emma happens to be really good at showcasing things like this, and she likes to blow up her Instagram with pictures of anything that she can get likes for. And I said, well, how about bamboo? Like, how can we get some likes out of this? And anything exotic like that, people love. And so we're gaining a lot of attention through this experiment. So I love that part, and it really leverages the dreaming piece. Development, and so this is one of my students from last year who's going to be a sophomore this year, Isabel. And Isabel really showcases that development piece because she took her dream all the way through to branding. And so she now has a company called Izzy's Treats. And so she has some maple trees at home that she taps for maple syrup. And she works with her parents to boil that down and make this maple syrup in a jar. And the development piece is huge because a lot of these dreams, they don't get off the ground because they don't have that development part. So that's kind of where I stepped in, and I said, okay, well, let's put this down on paper. So the big one here that I've started to work with students on is having them keep these journals, and so like having a physical thing that they can write down, because a lot of times we have to go outside for a lot of my stuff, and you can't bring a Chromebook outside, it's just not practical. So I said, okay, let's get mobile, let's get on the road. And so we can go to her house, and I can look at her maple trees, and she can write things down and start to sketch things. And it sounds old school, but it's way more practical in my field. And beyond that, venture capitalism, I consider myself a venture capitalist, even though it's typically $50 that I'm putting behind a business. But out of my FFA budget, I can put some money towards this, and I can say, Izzy, like, let's make this happen. And what's cool is these aren't big mega tech startups, right? They're a kid tapping maple trees for a little bit of syrup. So that's cool that I can just put forth $50, and that can be enough to start a business. I consider myself very lucky that I'm in a position like that. And again, Izzy's parents are very supportive with this, and whether it be a parent or a guardian, anybody that's at home makes this infinitely easier, because then they can also be that push that I can't be when I'm not there and I'm just in school. And finally, the determination part, and this is the most determined student at Montague High School. Clay is the leader of every single organization you can imagine at the school. And so with him, the little bit of a push, I don't need it. He's 10 feet away from me. So for him, it's okay, how can I make this bigger? How can I make this better? And he actually, tonight we're doing a beach cleanup because he started a nonprofit company that's going to take care of the beaches up in our area with another student of mine. And so it's more money and more chances for accolades with him. And not necessarily the money from, okay, I raise a goat, I can sell it, I can make some money at the market. It's beyond that. And so we had a sit-down conversation a couple months ago. And I said, well, Clay, how much do you make from goats? How much do you make from the pigs that you raise at home? And he said, well, I make this and this, but he goes, it's more than that. It's, well, how much money can I make off the scholarships that I'm going to apply for when I have these stories to put down on paper in those essays? I said, oh man, that's the dream. Like I've been thinking about this in terms of, okay, I can make this product and sell it. Well, no, a couple of years from now, this can be a $10,000 investment, because then I have that story and I have that proof of leadership to go on paper. So I think that's something that's hidden. I haven't seen it until now. Now that I've seen it, all right, we can leverage that into even more money down the road. And destroying that fear of failure. And so you brought this up earlier, that I have a lot of students that are really afraid of doing something like this because they think it's going to fail. And I tell them all the time, it's not like you're singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. If you screw that up, everybody's going to remember. If you screw up the feeding for that goat for one day, it's fine. It's a farm animal, right? You go back the next day and you fix it. It's the same thing for all these kids and their experiences, that they're supposed to make mistakes. They're supposed to be set up for that. I'm not setting them out to do something in front of a crowd of 10,000 people. I'm setting them up for something that they experience themselves, right? So you can fail a little bit, you can learn from it, and breaking through that's probably the biggest part into making that determination piece, because they have to be determined to push past that failure. And so finally, again, it wouldn't be education without ruining this by making some reflective piece. And, oh, kids hate this so much. And I try, and they've kind of accepted it now, because I say that the scholarship part doesn't happen without this part, but that's going to be kicking and screaming, for years and years. And that's okay. And so this is a student of mine, Ashlyn, who probably has the highest level of trajectory right because she is exponentially gaining these types of experiences. And she wants more. She craves it all the time. Oh man, I love that. And I'm finding more and more students every year that are finding this craving too. And so this is AET, and what it does is it tracks the experiences that these students are going through. And so it's a great way for them to, you can see in the small letters here, put in their financial entries so I can keep track of how much money they're making throughout all of these experiences. There's a journal entry as well, so maybe it's something that they don't make money on, but it's just an experience. They're just purely just learning. And so they put in these journal entries and files and photos to capture those pieces, so that way when they did it as a freshman and they recall it as a senior, everything's there. Okay? And what this does is it compiles everything together, and then we can use this for anything in FFA that relates to scholarships or other higher accolades. And so Ashlyn is kind of getting a start with this, and you can see some of her dollar values, and she's just going into her junior year, so this is going to only expand from here. And then finally here, this is Emma. So Emma is probably our star student at the school within the agriculture program. And she actually won the Outstanding Junior Award last year in our region. So from Ludington down to Holland and all the way from the Lake Shore over to Ionia, she was voted as the best junior member of FFA. And I believe that's like roughly 4,500 kids, so she's the top. And Emma really shows how much I've learned as well as the rest of the program, because I didn't send her out in November to test water. I sent her out last week and the week before so she can wear shorts in the water. It's not anything with a child mispractice. And we're also working with Grand Valley State researchers to do her research with water quality now. So with Emily, I have her throwing a Menards bucket out in the water. With Emma here, we're using the actual pieces to make sure that she's safely testing the water with the gloves and the actual protocol little bottles. And so we've come a long way, and since then, and then she takes these water samples down to a lab down here at the Annis Water Institute and tests these and goes through everything. So back in Emily's time, a year ago, we were doing it with little test tubes that I ordered in the mail. Now we're doing it at a university lab. So we've come a long way with this, and Emma's list, and as big as Ashlyn's was on the last slide, Emma's list is 3 times that long. And so for me, as an educator, I came out of it thinking, all right, well, how can I get kids to do their homework and show up to class? Well, now it's how can I get kids to add an 18th experience on that list, right, by the time they're graduating. And so for me, a lot of times it's making sure that I remember to push these kids because they can. And when we find experiences like this outside of the classroom where kids are doing everything from raising a goat to testing the beaches, for water quality, that it's not just enough to have these kids do their homework, it's to push them to be better leaders. And as cliche as that sounds, Emma is a leader because she's the first one to do this now, and students are coming up behind her and they're asking me, how can I do what Emma's doing? And if that's not leadership, I don't know what is. So at Montague, this is what we're looking for, and we're hoping not to just, again, build academics here, we're building everything outside of it.